So I've been really interested into the stats of Overwatch competitive lately, kind of seeing how it would play out with Brigitte meta, with people figuring out how to counter Brigitte meta, and not figuring out how to counter it, with people playing around it and not being able to play around it, all of that, and just kind of seeing what would happen. And as I've been looking at the stats, you know, I have found the heroes that have been OP and the heroes that have been bad and whatever, but what I think is very interesting about the stats for this meta is that they're not really like any meta in the past, or at least the majority of metas in the past. In the past, for the most part, there were a lot of heroes that were good all across the board, from the top level play to the bottom level play, and then some heroes that were bad all across the board. And while the season does have a decent amount of that, it also has a decent amount of heroes that are extremely good in high elo, or at least quite playable, but then completely unplayable or just terrible in low elo. And today I guess I'm going to be talking about those and just some of the heroes that the majority of players will probably kind of suck with, but the GM players are just completely carrying games with. And the first character I wanted to talk about here was Tracer. And I know what you're thinking. What? Tracer's garbage right now. Well, if you look at GM, actually, she's just about out of the top 10 best character in the game. She's one of the better DPS in GM, and actually, she's winning more than the majority of other DPS you think are pretty good right now. That could be Widowmaker, that could be Junkrat, you know, the other ones that maybe aren't seen as the OP tier, but still quite strong. And that's kind of weird. And I think why they can do this is because the top level of Tracers can always use outplay potential to beat just about everything. And if we look at the past, of course, Tracer was a lot better. You know, she had the highest win rate in the game forever in GM. But even though she's not the highest still, she still is very high because while, you know, it is harder to play around your counters, that being Brigitte mainly right now, and a lot of tanks, it still is possible. And if you can become good enough with the character and figure out how to play around your counters well enough, then you can almost nullify them. Not completely, but almost. For myself, watching a lot of pro Tracers, they just kind of ski around the Brigitte. Never get close to her, never play around her at all, just go for the other support, waste a lot of the Brigitte's time, makes it that she can never kill them, and it all works out pretty well for the Tracer player. They actually can win a lot of games. While if you look at the lower tier players, a lot of the times Tracers will just walk up next to the entire enemy team, Brigitte shield bashes them, one-shots them, and then you complain that your character sucks. It really does just depend mainly, I think, on positioning, and I think this is probably one of the hardest times ever to play Tracer, but obviously if you can, she's still actually kind of good, which again, kind of blew my mind. Now another character that has been really weird that I've been looking into for a while is Doomfist, and Doomfist actually started to get a little bit better at the end of the last season. A few more people started to pick him up, but this season has been extremely weird because while Tracer has been, you know, pretty bad and then pretty good, Doomfist is like extremely bad at lower elo and extremely good at higher elo. If you look at the win rates, Doomfist is usually within like the top 3 or 4 best character in the game at Grandmaster, and then within the top, I guess, bottom 3 or 4 characters in, you know, bronze, silver, and sometimes gold. And that's really weird. The same character is so much better or worse depending on where they're being played, and that usually doesn't apply to way too many people. And I think why it applies to Doomfist is kind of a similar way to Tracer, but I guess to a slightly lesser extent, or I guess even a greater extent, I don't know. With Doomfist, he is, again, like Tracer, a character that has to flank around, again, like Tracer, a character that has to get picks, again, like Tracer, a character that has a lot of outplay potential. And I think the thing about Doomfist is that he's like Tracer, but you can get cut out more right now. But at the same time, you can get more reward right now. I mean, you can one-shot Brigitte if you're playing really well with him. You can one-shot a lot of people and almost one-shot them through armor. You can do a lot with him, but at the same time, you can get shield bash and killed extremely quickly. And I think that's where it comes into play, where if you are a lower level Doomfist, there's a lot of CC right now. It's very easy to get CC'd and be killed, and you're suiciding and you're throwing. But at the same time, if you are a top level Doomfist, you can find out the openings in the enemy team. You can just exploit those, honestly. Kill him, take him out, and there you go. He becomes one of the best characters in the game because he's one of the only DPS other than Hanzo that can kind of consistently get kills and consistently push people back, consistently kill the Brigitte, or at least create a lot of space where the Brigitte can't really go. I think Doomfist is honestly quite a awkward character right now, and I probably would not recommend him to anybody that does not play him a lot because myself personally, I can't really get into him, and I know a lot of people that have tried and can't. But if you do want to get into him, and if you do think you can get to a higher rank, you know, he is working for that. But again, I think he is one of those characters where if you aren't good with him, it's going to really show, and especially right now, it's either essentially you feed or you carry, and that's kind of where it is, which is kind of interesting as Doomfist, as at least it's better than the past where it was just kind of like low win rate or low win rate. It doesn't really matter what rank you are. That's pretty interesting. So yeah, in general, I thought those two flankers were kind of cool. But one of the main characters I wanted to talk about today is Zarya, who, I mean, she's just on her own level of being weird compared to every previous meta. And even in the past, this is completely different. Now, in the first few seasons of Overwatch, Zarya was pretty good. And in general, the higher rank you got, the better Zarya got. But for the most part, it was like, in Bronze, Zarya was one of the best characters, but maybe not the best character. But then later on, when you got to Grandmasters, Zarya was like the best character, and that's kind of how it went. Right now, it's so weird, because if you look at the Grandmaster Zaryas, it's the best tank in the game right now. Just by far the best tank, the best possibility to carry. But then if you go to the lowest ranks, it's one of the worst tanks in the game right now. I mean, not completely unusable, and still a little bit better than Roadhog or Winston. But when you compare that to being, like, borderline overpowered to being borderline unplayable, that is a big difference for a character that I'm going to say is honestly a very meta character. And I think the thing with Zarya is that she is kind of difficult to play. And I think especially right now, she is awkward to play because I think she has so much potential in her kit, so much damage, so much, not mobility, but so much protection, I guess, so much ult prowess with Hanzo. There's a lot of stuff going for her, but at the same time, she's very awkward to play right now because there's a lot of snipers going around, which you can't do way too much against. There's a decent amount of speed going around, which is kind of a pain to go for. There's a decent amount of spam, which is kind of nice, but at the same time, a lot of people aren't going for spam. And I think one of the hardest things about it right now is that there's a decent amount of triple support, which sometimes they can just ignore your shield completely and you'll not get any charge. And overall, I think Zarya is a person that's just very weird because in the past, again, I mean, it seems like it didn't really matter way too much how good you were with Zarya. She was still a pretty good pick, but right now, I think especially, it's just hard to get charge unless you know how to get charge. And, well, of course, that does apply to every single meta with Zarya. I think right now is especially one of those times where it's just really difficult because there isn't way too much instant burst that will instantly give Zarya 100% charge. There isn't way too much stuff that will just, hey, you know, put a shield on this guy. There's going to be a few Pharaoh rockets going in soon. You know, that sometimes happens, but doesn't happen way too much. And overall, I think that, yeah, the way that she is right now is extremely interesting because, again, one of the best, one of the worst. Now, another thing I want to say about Zarya right here is that I think that she is, overall, going to be a character that is a great one to actually try to get better at, because as you look at the ranks, as you start to get higher and higher and higher rank, her win rate also starts to climb higher and higher and higher. And it's kind of weird because as you get better, the way that you interact with people in your rank gets better. I'm not going to say that the character gets better because she is, you know, good at every single rank. You know, if you're great as her, but the way that you interact with your teammates works better. And I think a thing about Zarya that is very important is that she is very dependent on her team. And while she can get a lot of damage by herself and can get some, you know, super clutch solo ults and super clutch solo picks, especially if you're very good as her, for the average player, that's probably not going to happen way too much. And for the average player, you're probably going to be down quite a bit of charge. And for the average player, you know, you're going to need your teammates to help you, to back you up, to give you a lot of shield, to give you a lot of just presence on the map. And I guess something else I should mention right here is that Zarya is a huge play enabler in this meta. In a meta where there's a ton of CC, where there's a ton of stuns, throws, knockbacks, whatever, Zarya allows for those to all be completely ignored. And at high ranks, I mean, if you're doing that on a Tracer or a Doomfist or a Genji or even on a Reinhardt at the right time, that can make you almost instantly win a point because your Brigitte is still applying stuns while theirs can't. But at lower ranks, that doesn't really happen. And I think that whole part of her kit, which is such a strong part about it right now, just nullifying the enemies in a lot of situations, doesn't really apply. People won't use that to their advantage. And in general, I think there's just a lot of stuff that makes good Zaryas great and makes bad Zaryas have a big time and a bad time trying to really climb as her. And I guess another character I want to mention really quickly here is Mei. Mei's also been weird this season because there's been a lot of people that have been able to pull her off. Her play rate has gone up quite a bit, but at the same time, she's only really good at the highest elo, or maybe Diamond Plus. Below that, she does struggle quite a bit because, again, like Zarya, I think she is very team-based and needs her teammates to be able to make so that her, you know, essentially stun, but, you know, freeze is a lot more useful, and her wall is a lot more useful. So that's another character I wanted to mention, but didn't want to talk about way too much because, I mean, she's always kind of been like this if you look at her win rates in every single season. With all that said, though, guys, there you go. That's just kind of what I've been looking at for different characters in different ranks. I know that this video might have not been the most important video of all time, but I just thought it was interesting, so I wanted to talk about it. That's kind of how I pick a lot of my topics, so I guess if you want a more specific topic in the future, make sure to leave that down in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get to that. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this in the future, or the notification button. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.